Welcome everyone to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. Welcome back. It's Sunday. We're going to be reviewing Bitcoin and I'm going to have a little look at, for example, we talked about XRP and we had a setup last week, which I think has a genuine kind of short-term catalyst. So exciting for that. And I think, the market is going to be in a little bit of a rut for a while. I think ETH might actually also start to show some signs of a pullback. We're all going to be talking about that a little bit later. Personally, I'm going to be trading a little bit less over the next couple of days / weeks, depending on how price is going to develop and take some time to catch up with lost responsibilities that I haven't paid much attention to. First of all, I want to thank Prime XBT for sponsoring my content. If you like this content, Prime XBT is an exchange that allows you to trade all kinds of various features, derivatives, spot, and they also have things like co-vesting. I haven't tried that out yet, but if you like this content, consider signing up using the link in the description below / in the watermark using the promo code Bitcoin Jack, and you will get a 50% deposit bonus on your first deposit and up to 0.5 BTC. So that's a pretty cool deal. If you like this content, you can sponsor me doing that, and they sponsor me. So thank you, Prime, and let's jump in. I think Bitcoin, last week we talked about me not being quite certain whether we would have a sell-off that way or we would go that way. I had very low conviction on BTC, and I remain a bit cautious here. I was cautiously optimistic. I wouldn't have been surprised if Bitcoin was going to break out, but I clearly have right now the ID, and I had last week as well, that this region up here is the main region to breach on a high time frame for me to become bullish again, or to get a pretty nice discount on Bitcoin, right? So if we consider everything that's been happening over the last, over a year, we have had a few sizey corrections, but none of them have been as big as we've seen previously. Some people attribute that to the fact that this time is different and there's more liquidity in the market and spreads are lower, which means that it's likely that corrections are going to be less severe, smaller. I think the largest one we've seen was 31.5%, and the other ones have been, let's see, 26. This one has been 27, and so far the current correction to its absolute low has been 29%. So historically, Bitcoin has corrected far more severe. 40% has been, pretty normal in 2017 and before. In other bull runs, we've seen way larger corrections. I'm not saying that's necessarily what has to happen here, but there's a few things I want to point out. Let's get rid of the magnet so I can freely draw. This block right here, consolidation, inverse head and shoulders, pushed us to new highs. We've traded into it once. Then we traded into it twice right here. Then we kind of breached it and somehow managed to get back above it. And now we're trading into it again on a daily basis. So this is definitely a distinct test of this block. This is definitely a distinct test of this block. This is a distinct test of this block failed, but kind of recaptured its level, and then we're at it again. So personally, any move back above out of this zone is not necessarily going to make me bullish. I mean, I'd be very surprised if this just goes up from here. Then the other thing I want to point out is that during this sell-off, we had, I think, approximately $2.5 billion in open interest wiped from all future exchanges, and that's roughly just over 10%. 10%. I think there was around 20 billion open interest. So that also is not that significant. If you're talking about capitulation, this doesn't really feel like it, even though, this was probably the most aggressive sell-off candle since this region in January. So to add to that, this whole structure now kind of feels like a distribution. And I don't necessarily say that, there's been no big hands buying in this range. Probably there have been. But to me, it seems that it's likely either that price is just going to range for a pretty long time and eventually get above RX here, or it's going to keep on selling off. So we got a little consolidation up here, and then we're going to get at least another leg down, maybe 2 legs down. And I don't know where exactly that will end up at. Oh, Jesus fucking, it's hailing. I was supposed to actually go outside today and get some things done on my van, but it's hailing like the size of rocks right now. All right, well, back to the subject here. So this low here kind of front ran the high in January. It kind of does feel at this point that we're gonna sell off into it, at least wipe it out, and maybe it's, I'm not trying to predict what's going to happen here. I'm not saying that we're going down here, but once we start getting down, getting to sell off here, that's where I slowly start to pay attention to get back into position, and then obviously above the X. This just is ranging behavior. It does feel like distribution at this point, and just to to show if that's going to be a 40% correction, for example, that's straight into the daily block here that caused our, well, quote-unquote continuation, which doesn't really look like continuation at this point, but there was quite some gains there. So yeah, that's kind of, the way I look at it is that I want to see a fair capitulation. I want to see like 30-40% of the open interest wiped. I want to see a lot of pain before I actually get interested in getting sizey longs again. And then at the other end of that story, if that doesn't happen, I need to patiently wait for high time frame structures to break to the upside. So if we get a visual on the weekly, no, wait. So basically there's two levels of interest down here. This daily breakout block where we consolidated a little bit before we broke out. Although it's, it's small, there's not a lot of size to it. And even the candle that occurred after here had fairly low volume if we consider Coinbase. So then there's this block down here, which has a little bit more size to it. And this block is complicated because it has this wick that happened on the expiration of the options on the 29th of Jan. So there's pretty much 2 levels of interest that where I'll be looking to consider going long, but it will kind of depend on how the candle looks, how vicious the candle is, how fast it is, how much volume is in there, how much liquidations we'll be seeing, how the open interest interacts around those levels. So patience basically on Bitcoin. And if we consider the weekly, that is, it does look like a bull flag. So maybe it is just, testing demand here and it's going to hold. It's quite possible. And but in that case, I kind of feel a little bit worried right now to go along and take the risk. I would rather just wait until we actually clear the resistance, which right by now is quite sizey. So patience here, and I think it's worth looking at the Bitcoin dominance here. It just kept on falling, and that is, into levels we drew last week, where it would be logical to start expecting some kind of reaction. We have the level here, which we have not quite reached, which is the low around here. And then again, we have the whole discussion whether we can actually chart Bitcoin dominance and whether it's going to be of influence. I do think it has some influence. It just doesn't mean that if it hits this level, we go short on all alts. It just doesn't work that way. So we'll have to look at the individual altcoins to come up with a game plan. So right now we have the whole Elon saying currency has to be, cheap fees and has to be high volume, high velocity. And I actually agree with him. Like if you're talking about currency, not about money, not about a store of value, that is your ideal characteristic of what a currency provides. And then you have, on the other side, you have money, which in this case, Bitcoin right now, its first goal was to become money, a store of value. And being a store of value, it then can grow into something else. So the layer 1 of Bitcoin is bootstrapped over the years by focusing on securing a settlement layer that is robust and can securely, trustlessly secure your assets, right? And then we have all these side chains, Lightning Network, which are developing at a pretty fast pace right now. We have altcoins that try to do the same kind of stuff, and then we have Taproot, which I do think is going to get activated or accepted to be activated in the months to come, which is going to give Bitcoin more flexibility in terms of being able to script smart contracts for Bitcoin, which is pretty cool. So, with the whole Elon thing going on, there's this one coin that we talked about last week that actually did not look that bad on the BTC pair, and it's XRP. XRP is a cheap, relatively cheap coin. It's a fast coin. It's absolutely, in my opinion, not decentralized, but it does kind of, fit the narrative that Elon is currently feeding the market. And we talked about the daily having to claim the red, this green line here, which it did, and then we kind of went straight up into the resistance up here. So I do think that if this whole Elon narrative continues and Bitcoin is going to sell off and ETH is going to have some kind of rotation, that XRP is going to do fairly well in that kind of environment. So right now it's at resistance. If it at some point manages to claim it, whatever I said last week holds true, and it's going to trade at least into the 4K sats region, and possibly, I'd see it go all the way up to like 7 to 8K sats, which is a considerable amount of alpha if that happens. Even if Bitcoin sells off 20% from here, it's absolutely going to outperform on the BTC and on the USD aspect of your portfolio. So let's keep an eye on that. And then ETH, I'm out of it, so I'm just commenting on market behavior right here without any position. But there is, for now at least, some kind of weakness to be spotted. If we look at the daily, we can see that we claimed the high on the 12th of May, but then lost it straight. Let me have a sip of coffee here. We lost it straight on the day after and got rejected by the same level. And if we zoom in on, let's grab the 4 hour, it's a much cleaner visual. It does now look like a deviation where we had the high here, up here, broke it. So this is your deviation, came down and then retested the level, got rejected, and now it's selling off back into the range. So essentially, in my opinion, doesn't look great until it does get above, the high here. And this does feel that like it's gonna try and go at least test the range low here at 0.074, and potentially come back into our orange level. And if it does get really bad, way lower, but let's not skip ahead. But if the entire market is gonna shave some things off, then we're, I think it's likely to trade back into orange here. That would be, I don't know if I would be going long here, if this starts to show weakness. But what I do think is that if we see capital rotations, that some of the ETH may actually go into XRP. And then there is, we talked about EOS, I think. This hasn't really done what we wanted. This kind of starts to look like a deviation now as well. Ideally, what I would have, wanted to see was that it traded into the level here and then came back up and started to reclaim it. It kind of didn't do that, so not sure what I think of this. This is resistance above us, and then there's support below us, but it didn't really trade into it. If it does trade into it, I might consider a long too, because EOS, might get kind of the same narrative as XRP. So that's kind of the two coins I think that may be actually doing, like the two majors that I think might do well in such an environment. And then I think that's kind of it for today. I hope that made sense. Almost 20 minutes, so slightly longer than usual. I want to give another shout out to Prime XBT for sponsoring this content. And if you guys like it, just check out the link and use the promo code BitcoinJack. I want to thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Cheers.